The next generation of great Catholic podcasting is here. This is what your brain has been waiting for. Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment, all from a Catholic perspective. Sit back, relax, grab your cup of coffee, and enjoy the show. You've just joined Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin.
You have indeed just joined Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin, hosted by the Catholic Family Podcast. Kevin is still away on a vacation, and my buddy Eric was unable to join us this week for the show, so I am hopping on to give you a very brief but hopefully informative and entertaining show today. I wanted to start off by saying yesterday was one of my favorite days in the church. It was the feast of Pope St. Pius X, one of my favorite popes, and I do have a little bit more on him for the show later today. But I just wanted to start off with letting our audience know that Kevin and I, we do read and take into account the comments that are provided to us underneath the video here in the comment section on YouTube. While we don't reply to them all or acknowledge them all or comment back, we do read them, and we do try to take into consideration what people have to say for us. But with that, we do try to collectively put forth what we feel is best for the show, for the channel overall. Obviously, we can't please everybody, and sometimes the requests or the comments or the suggestions are contradictory of each other, so we can't please everybody. But do know that we do read them. We appreciate your feedback. We do take them into consideration, and we appreciate the input that you have for our show, and we do try to gear it towards our audience, of course, which is why we do this anyway. So our listeners. So thank you again, as always, for those comments and suggestions. We appreciate it, and I just wanted to start the show off that way. Brief story that I have for you today. I wanted to kind of share this with the audience and maybe get some people's thoughts before I jump into some works of Pope Pius X that I wanted to share now that we're a day removed from his feast. I have been having these dreams, and the theme of this dream is repetitive. Now, every dream is different, but the theme has been repetitive. And in the last, maybe 2 or 3 years, I've had this dream 5 or 6 times, I would say. So it's getting to the point where I'm wondering, why does this dream keep happening? And I'd like to share it with you all. Maybe we have some dream interpreters listening today who can offer me some feedback. So like I said, the dream is not an exact replica each time, but the overall point of what happens is. So here's 2 days ago now. Was it Saturday? Yes, 2 days ago now. I had the dream where I was at work and I wanted to get to Mass and confession. And it's always at a church that I don't have any knowledge of, that as far as I'm aware, it doesn't exist. It's one of those things, that your mind makes up in your dream. So this church is not a real physical church, but I get there somehow, and in my dream it makes perfect sense, of course, but I get there and I say, I was just a little bit before Mass started and I wanted to get to confession. Well, the priest who was getting vested for Mass, I thought to myself, well, I don't want to bother. I was in the church. I don't want to bother him. He's getting vested. I don't want to interrupt him, but I'm sure there's more around. And so I kind of walk around a little bit. I try to see, is anybody available to have me stop them? And I can just pause and say, hey, excuse me, do you mind hearing my confession? And there's never any success. Right. So I started walking around and I see that there's a hall connected, like a parish hall or not a crying room, but there's a separate room on the side in the back where I thought to myself, maybe if I go in here and wait, maybe a priest will pass by and I could stop him and ask if he can hear my confession. Well, I open the door and I go into the side room and there's a sign that said confessional. And I overheard through the door people talking. So I was rather relieved that, great. I'm here, I made it to Mass and there's confessions being heard behind this door. So I'll wait my turn. And a person came out of the door and I went in next and it was a woman sitting there. And I said to her, I'm sorry, but what are you doing here? Are you two just conversing with each other? And she goes, oh no, I'm hearing confessions. And obviously, women can't be priests. They're not hearing confessions. And I said to her, you're what? Like, you're doing what? Are you Catholic? And she said, no, I'm not Catholic. I just hear the confessions here. And I woke up. And as I mentioned, that is like the fifth or sixth time where I've gone to a church over the past few years, where I've gone to a church in a dream and went to the confessional only to find that a woman is hearing confessions. Now, I don't know why this dream repeats. Maybe people can weigh in. Maybe they have some sort of interpretation or insight they can offer me. But I'm also wondering, do you have any dreams yourself that are somewhat related to either the Mass or the faith or the sacraments or what have you? If you do, drop them in the comment section down below. I would be curious to hear your input on that. Before I share a little bit on the works of Pope St. Pius X, I have a little Catholic trivia for you here in order to transition us from one segment kind of into another. The trivia question today, and I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, is who was the longest reigning pope of the Catholic Church? The answer and a little bit more when we come back from break. Stay with us. Welcome back in Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin, hosted by the Catholic Family Podcast. I left you with a trivia question before we hop to a brief break here to segue into our next segment. The question was, who is the Pope in the Catholic Church who reigned the longest? The answer to that is Pope Pius IX, who reigned 31 years, 7 months, 23 days, from 1846 to 1878. I did not know that. I would have never have guessed Pope Pius VII. I don't know why. Just would not have come to my mind. But I'm curious how you all did with the little trivia here. It had me thinking, though, before I get on to some topics written by Pope St. Pius X, I was thinking the other day, imagine being a young man, maybe a young seminarian, who looked up to and had a great reverence and respect towards the Supreme Pontiff, and you get ordained to the priesthood. You are consecrated a bishop. You are promoted to the College of Cardinals, and one day elevated to the chair of Peter. And part of your reign as a Supreme Pontiff is to canonize your predecessor. Now, I know that Eugenio Pacelli, the future Pope Pius XII, had a great love and respect and admiration towards his predecessors. And I can't quite fathom what it must have been like for him to stand there before the universal church and speak those wonderful words of, "We define and decree Pius X to be among the saints." I think that must be a surreal experience to have. And it really just made me think of the mystical, glorious elements of the papacy, the full power and authority to bind and loose and command and declare and decree. It must have been a very solemn moment for him, right? Because he chose his name, Pius XII, after his predecessors. He said something like, "My whole life has been pious, as I too will be pious." Just something that crossed my mind as I was reflecting on the day yesterday. I have a few works of Pope St. Pius X that I wanted to share with you all. The first is his well-known Oath Against Modernism. I have a quick section here that I wanted to read to you all and kind of jump to one more of his works. But this one was written in 1910, and it was an oath that Pope St. Pius X wrote to be sworn by all clergy, pastors, confessors, preachers, superiors, and professors in philosophical and theological seminaries. And I wanted to read this part because this part really stood out to me in the Oath Against Modernism, and I wanted to share it with you all today. So this was one of the fourth point that Pope Pius X was making here in his oath that he gave to these men. Quote, I sincerely hold that the doctrine of faith was handed down to us from the apostles through the Orthodox fathers in exactly the same meaning and always in the same purport. Therefore, I entirely reject the heretical misrepresentation that dogmas evolve and change from one meaning to another, different from what the Church held previously. I also condemn every error according to which, in place of the divine deposit, which has been given to the spouse of Christ to be carefully guarded by her, there is put a philosophical figment or product of a human conscience that has gradually been developed by human effort and will continue to develop indefinitely. Fifthly, I hold with certainty and sincerely confess that faith is not a blind sediment of religion welling up from the depths of the subconscious under the impulse of the heart and the motion of a will trained to morality, but faith is a genuine assent of the intellect to truth, received by hearing from an external source. By this assent, because of the authority of the supremely truthful God, we believe to be true that which has been revealed and attested to by a personal God, our Creator and Lord. End quote. I wanted to repeat that one part here because I think it's very important in today's day and age. I hold with certainty and sincerely confess that faith is not a blind sediment of religion welling up from the depths of the subconscious under the impulse of the heart and the motion of a will trained to morality, but faith is a genuine assent of the intellect to truth received by hearing from an external source. Our faith is not one of emotion or experiences or encounter or caresses. It is one that we give genuine assent to by hearing the teachings of the authority of the Holy Catholic Church. That is our faith. Wanted to close on Pope St. Pius X, in his work called Our Apostolic Mandate. I believe this is from 1914. You can maybe look this up. It's actual titles in French, but in English it's Our Apostolic Mandate. This point here is very strong as well. I'd like to read it. Christ, this is Pius X, quote, Christ has laid down with supreme authority the condition that we must belong to his flock. We must accept his doctrine. We must practice virtue. And we must accept the teaching and guidance of Peter and his successors. While Jesus was kind to sinners and to those who went astray, he did not respect their false ideas. While he lifted up the lowly, it was not to instill in them the sediment of a dignity independent from and rebellious against the duty of obedience. While his heart overflowed with gentleness for the souls of goodwill, he could also arm himself with holy indignation against the profaners of the house of God, against the wretched men who scandalized the little ones, against the authorities who crushed the people with the weight of heavy burdens without putting out a hand to lift them. He was as strong as he was as gentle. He reproved, threatened, chastised, knowing and teaching us that fear is the beginning of wisdom, and that it is sometimes proper for a man to cut off an offending limb to save his body. End quote. That is Pope St. Pius X, Our Apostolic Mandate. And the date on that is, 1910. And it was given by him to the French bishops. When you hear these words of the saintly Pope, They are constantly focused on the supernatural. And you can hear that. If you need to go back, rewind, play it again, you can hear it. He's thinking of these wonderful things of God teaching us of the necessity of belonging to this flock, to this one church, of being submitted to the Roman pontiff, of doing work in virtue. These are the things that the church will teach and has always taught and will always teach. The church does not lose her mission. So reflect today on these saintly words, whose feast we celebrated yesterday, of Pope St. Pius X. Pray for us. I wanted to close the show today with you by just reminding you all how necessary it is to pray. And I think one of the saints said, meditation and sin cannot coexist. And how many people are living lives of sin who, when you ask them, well, how's your prayer life? They don't pray. That is the first remedy, I think, that people need to really start to apply in their lives, is to take a crucifix, take a holy image, take a rosary, and meditate on it. Look at whatever you are holding in your hand there. I like to do a crucifix and talk to our Lord as if he was sitting there before you, telling him your joys, your worries, your doubts, your fears. Invoke Our Lady. Put her name on your lips always. She is often depicted holding a lily. A lily is the symbol of purity. Purity of heart, purity of mind, purity of body, purity of soul, purity of memory, purity of tongue. She's the Queen of Lilies. Turn to her, invoke her name, and practice these virtues little by little, day by day, and make that time for that prayer, make that time for that meditation, and slowly but surely, you will find that temptations that you might be faced with are subdued a little bit. Ask Our Lady, under the title Queen of Lilies, to cleanse your memory, to give it a pure act of the will, and always, as I said before, keep her sweet name on your lips as you go about your day. Thank you for listening to Monday Mornings with Pat and Kevin here on the Catholic Family Podcast. God bless.
Thank you for listening. Tune in every Monday at 9 Eastern for a brand new episode.